When trouble comes, we need to make it a habit of seeking God's help. In the church, we hear a word that is used quite often, and in many cases, that word is misused and misunderstood. From Genesis to Revelation, it's used 170 times. Now, in the Old Testament, the focus was not on the giver, but on the receiver, and the word meant the kindness of one toward another, or having favor with God. In the New Testament, the word kept its meaning, but with more clarity, meaning it was the kindness of a master toward his servants. Today, the word still has its meaning, but its definition has been simplified, so simplified. And it means to get something that you don't deserve, or the unmerited, undeserved favor of God, and that word is grace. In this book, the Book of Easy Answers, John Tellman says that grace, as it is found in the New Testament, is more than unmerited favor. It is God's help and His holy influence in our lives. Stick around because that's what we're talking about today. Now, this video is part of a series coming from this book, the Book of Easy Answers, which is co-authored by my pastor friend John Tellman and his colleague Carrie Pocha. This is my 5th video on the book, and you can watch the rest of the videos by clicking the link in the description, or at the end of this video, I am going to have a whole playlist for you that you can watch. You can also buy the book by clicking the link in the description and in the first comment as well. Now, for some of the trouble that we face in life, we're guilty, and we've got to take responsibility for the poor choices and decisions that we have made. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We make some dumb choices, and we have to face the consequences of those choices. But there are times that there is an accident, a health issue, an unfortunate event that had nothing to do with ourselves. I mean, it wasn't anything that we did. It just happened. In either case, we grapple with what to do. Maybe not today and maybe not even tomorrow, but it's a safe bet that eventually you and we're going to need some help that mom and dad just can't solve. Help beyond what we can see or figure out with our limited human resources. So the blessing of God's grace, that's the answer. And it's the easy answer to whatever confronts you. John explains it this way. God's help can come in many forms. For example, have you ever received an unexpected blessing and said, "I didn't see that coming"? Now, John argues that is God's grace extended towards you. He goes on to say that if you're sick, God's help is healing. If your bank account is empty or there's no food in the fridge, God's help comes through His provision. The point John makes is that when trouble comes, we need to make it a habit of seeking God's help. Next, he says that God's help also comes through His influence. Not just through a blessing, but through His influence. And what that means is that when you trust in the Lord with all your heart and you don't lean on your own understanding, and when you acknowledge Him in all your ways, He will direct your path. In other words, His influence directs our decisions, and my goodness, today we most definitely need God's wisdom, don't we? And thankfully, James tells us that if we lack wisdom, then all we need to do is ask of God, and He'll give it. You ever heard that phrase, the still small voice of God? Like that time you flew off the handle and you started speaking in a foreign tongue called sarcasm, which, by the way, I am very, very fluent in. Anyway, that still small voice reminds you that, hey, that wasn't very nice, and you probably need to go back and apologize. Or when you're looking for something that you just set down, and you think to yourself, you know what, I should probably just take a third look in that cushion of the couch, and lo and behold, it's there this time. Or when you're trying to make a decision about something, Paul wrote that as many as are led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. You see that still small voice that leads you to look in the cushion again, that still small voice that tells you to go back and to apologize, that still small voice that tells you what decision to make. John argues is God's influence in your life. And you know, when we're influenced by God instead of the problem, we're going to act in love, in kindness, compassion, and generosity towards others. When we're influenced by God, it's going to change our behavior. It's going to change our attitude. And you know, the interesting thing here is that we actually become people that others want to be around. John argues, and I agree 100%, that God is your help for heaven. The Apostle Paul wrote that by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it's a gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one can boast. You see, the easy answer to eternity is God's grace, because there is no other way. The key to receiving God's grace is to humble ourselves and to admit to God, to ourselves, that we need His help, that we need His grace, because there isn't anything that we can do to save ourselves. Nothing that we can do to earn our place in heaven. It is a gift from God that is received through faith. That is grace. You can receive that anytime, any place. And if you'd like to do that now, it's as simple as understanding 4 things. Number 1, it's understanding that God is the creator of the universe, that He is perfectly holy, and that He demands holiness from us. Number 2, it's understanding that we're sinners, that we're separated from God, and we're helpless to save ourselves. He demands holiness, and we are far from holy. Number 3, because we are not holy and because we are unable to save ourselves, God sent His one and only Son, Jesus Christ, to pay the price for our sin. He made a way for us to be saved by dying for us on the cross, shedding His blood as payment for our sin. His death defeated sin, and His resurrection defeated the grave, giving us a confident hope of life after death in heaven with our Creator. Now, number 4, for this to happen, we've got to repent of our sin, and we must live in obedience to His word. If you've never done that, today is your day of salvation. Today you can call upon the Lord, and anyone who calls upon the Lord shall be saved. If you still have questions about heaven, I have a huge playlist answering all of your questions about heaven. You can watch that at the end of this video. But if you have questions about becoming a Christian, that is the single most important thing that you need to get figured out right now. You can either watch the video on your screen, or you can send a personal message to my email, which is also in the description and the first comment. You need to make for sure that you know where you're going when you exit this life. Don't forget the Book of Easy Answers. If you're interested in purchasing this book, you can find a link in the description and in the first comment below. God bless.